It's Carter, man, and let's take a moment to talk about a really serious topic, if we may, and that's this absurd, appalling, chilling, and frightening pending indictment of Donald Trump. Okay, it is the single worst abuse of the political system that I've seen in my lifetime in politics, and that goes back 50 years. Okay, so let's break it down. Let's break it down, if we may. And then I'm going to put it really in perspective for you. First of all, none of us know what Donald Trump did with Stormy Daniels, or whatever her name is, porno star. But if he had any kind of relationship with her, it's kind of logical that you might want to buy her silence, okay? And for the politicians, over and over now in America, it goes back to the vile politicians that corrupt everything they touch. If the politicians want to come after him and try and make that a big political issue, they're once again showing the total bankruptcy of America's political establishment, okay, of our political structure. It's totally corrupt. And this is one more indication of it. Look, if Donald Trump had any kind of a relationship with Stormy Daniels, it kind of makes sense that he would be willing to pay her some money to silence the whole thing. I'm sorry, it just does. Those guys out there watching, you know what I mean? The women, yeah. The toughest guy I ever met in my life, good friend of mine, toughest guy I ever met in my life. He had been a collector for the Buffalino family. He was big and he was tough. I don't even know some of the things he did because he wouldn't talk about it. But I remember walking into his office one day, and he was obviously shaken up. And I said, "Hey, man, what's the matter with you? Man, you look shook." And he said, "Man, my wife is angry at me." I said, "What?" I said, "So what?" And he said, "Hey, I'm scared to death of her." This is a guy who I can tell you had face down gunmen, okay? He had been in the worst situations you and I can't even imagine. But he said, "I'm scared to death of her," okay? My wife is 5'4", little Honduran, a girl, much younger than me. You'd think, hey, you must kind of dominate that relationship. I'm scared to death of her. Okay? It's just the way it is, folks, and anybody who's honest is going to admit that. So it would make total sense for Donald Trump, for personal reasons, as he has said, to make that payoff. Nothing to do with politics, for God's sake. See, the trouble with politicians, those whose whole life revolves around that, is they have what's called confirmation bias. Everything they do relates to that corrupt element, evil essence within themselves. And that's the larger picture here. That's the larger picture. I started out saying that our political system, the structure, is totally bankrupt now. It's totally corrupt. And it truly is. We have reached, and this whole politicization of a personal problem in Donald Trump's life is a perfect example of it. Only people whose heart has been corrupted by politics would think of just being so vile. But what politics does to people. It's an infection of the soul. I'm telling you, I've worked with politicians, highest levels in Washington, for almost 50 years. So you have a situation where here's our problem. Politics now has reached a point where it's corrupted by prestige, power, and payola. That's what American politics is all about now. It no longer works because after, it started out great, I'm sure. I think even up to be honest with you, until the 80s, it still had some balance there. But today it has gone the total, all the way to prestige, power, and payola. That's what these politicians now live for. I'm sorry, but it's true. I know these people. Think about what you see, the Schumer, Pelosi, McConnell, even to a certain extent, McCarthy, because he stayed too long. He's doing some good things, by the way, but he stayed too long. So what's the solution? I'm going to give that to you as I wrap up here. Here are the solutions. I'm telling you, this is what we have to do to regain control of a broken political system. Term limits. There are four moves. There we go. Four that are a must. We have to do it. Term limits. Okay? Term limits. 6 years and go home. Go home and leave the rest of us alone. Recall. I call it total recall. Politicians should know that it's very easy for them to get recalled if they cast one vote that their people don't like. Yeah. Let them live in fear. Let them live in fear of us instead of us now having to live in fear of them. Okay? I call it total recall. Term limits, total recall. Income caps. We're getting rid of the payola. The average salary of a member, remember I've told you, and I'm going to repeat it, the average net worth of a member of the U.S. Senate is now $7 million. It's obscene. That's obscene. The average net worth of the average American is about $120,000. Those wealthy elite can't represent the real working people. They can't. So here's the solution. Income caps. When people are in office, they have to know when you get to Washington, you divest yourself of all income except for the average salary in the state or district you represent. That way you can if you resemble the people you represent, then you can relate to the people you represent. That's third and fourth. Session caps, 6 months. Senate and House, 6 months. Do whatever damage you can in those 6 months and get the hell out of Dodge. It's just that simple. Sound extreme? It is extreme, but it's necessary because the total destruction of our political system is now extreme by these vile political actors, okay? We've got to get the system back. We've got to get it under control. Everything I've just mentioned, Congress can do. And don't let them say, well, we have rules on this. There are no rules. Congress is a rule unto itself. And the Supreme Court's going to do it. Look, if the Supreme Court could shred the Constitution over the COVID hoax by saying, well, John Roberts, well, if you use the word health and safety, then you can do anything you want. It's constitutional. What? That's what they did. Well, when you have a political system that corrupt, they can do anything they want. And what we want them to do are the four I just mentioned: term limits, total recall, income caps, and session caps. Let's do this thing.